Have you ever noticed how your stomach just completely drops and your heart rate spikes when a text message goes unanswered for a few hours?
Oh, absolutely. Or, maybe you fall on the absolute opposite end of the spectrum, like why you might suddenly feel this intense, overwhelming urge to just get up and walk away.
Right, like asking for space the absolute second someone gets a little too emotionally close to you. It's a universal human experience, but the reasons behind it are incredibly specific to your own biology.
Yeah, those visceral reactions, the sudden panic or the intense urge to flee, they aren't just, random personality quirks or signs that you're incompatible with someone.
They're deeply ingrained survival mechanisms.
Exactly. And they operate almost entirely below the level of our conscious awareness, well, until we actively choose to interrupt the circuit.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is our entire mission for this deep dive. If you spend like any time online these days, you've probably been flooded with content about attachment
Oh,
styles.
the algorithms love it.
They really do. But we want to cut through the social media noise, specifically that TikTok drama, the videos, the 30-second clips with the dramatic, moody voiceovers.
The ones that diagnose you with 5 different complex psychological issues in 30 seconds?
Yes. They tell you exactly what's wrong with you, but they don't actually offer any mechanics for how to fix it. So we are bypassing all of that today.
Right. We're getting into the real practical psychology of how attachment styles actually function in the brain. And more importantly, how we can actually change them.
Exactly. We're pulling from some incredible research today, including the framework from a guide called Navigating Connection, and we're even going to look at a real-world case study.
Yeah, a really fascinating telehealth practice in Georgia called Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC.
Right, to see how everyday people are doing this exact rewiring work. So to lay the foundation here, what actually is an attachment style when we, strip away the pop psychology?
Well, fundamentally, your attachment style is the internal blueprint for how you relate to other human beings. But the crucial caveat to understand is that this blueprint dictates how you connect, especially when you're under stress.
Ah, so it's not about how you act on like a sunny Tuesday when you just got a promotion and everything is going your way.
Exactly. Because when you're on vacation and everything is perfectly fine and you just had a great meal, I mean, everyone feels pretty secure.
Right. You aren't worried about abandonment when you're holding a pina colada on the beach.
You really aren't. Stress acts as an amplifier. So when your nervous system detects a threat, whether that's a physical threat or an emotional one like perceived rejection, your prefrontal cortex essentially goes offline.
And that's the part that handles all your logic and rational thinking, right?
Yes, your amygdala, which is the brain's fear center, just takes a wheel. It strips away all your conscious, polite coping mechanisms and reveals the underlying primal wiring.
Wow. And there are four primary categories for this wiring. Let's start with the first two, which represent opposite ends of how we handle closeness.
Right, starting with the secure attachment style.
Yeah, this is defined as being comfortable with closeness, but also being totally comfortable on your own. If you have a secure style, you can clearly state what you need to a partner or a friend.
And crucially, you don't treat a minor conflict like it's a literal threat to your survival.
A secure individual's nervous system is incredibly resilient. When a disagreement happens, their amygdala doesn't flood their body with cortisol and adrenaline.
Exactly. They're able to maintain activity in their prefrontal cortex, which allows them to see a disagreement as an external problem to be solved together, not as an impending catastrophe.
But then we look at the anxious attachment style, and the baseline operates completely differently.
Oh, entirely differently. You don't just prefer closeness. Your nervous system essentially demands it to feel safe.
Someone with an anxious style deeply fears abandonment. And, going back to our opening question, this is the person who tends to check their phone 30 times an hour when someone hasn't replied.
Right, because the anxious system is trapped in a state of hypervigilance. It's an evolutionary scanning mechanism.
The brain is constantly analyzing the environment, right? The tone of voice, micro expressions, looking for any slight indication of pulling away.
Yes, because to the anxious brain, a disconnection doesn't just mean a breakup. Historically, in childhood, a disconnection meant a loss of the very person keeping you alive.
I was thinking about this biological response, and the best way I can picture it is to think of your attachment style under stress, like a smartphone's battery saving mode.
Oh, I like that.
Think about it. When your emotional battery is fully charged, your phone does everything. The screen is bright, you're charming, you're rational, all the background apps are running perfectly.
But the second that battery drops to 5% because of a stressful event,
Your phone automatically defaults to a very specific pre-programmed setting just to survive. The screen dims, the background refresh turns off. You don't consciously tell the phone to do that, it just executes the code to stay alive.
that's a perfect analogy. The human nervous system operates on that exact same algorithmic logic.
Right.
When that emotional battery drops, the secure and the anxious modes process the exact same external stressor through entirely different neural pathways.
Take the unanswered text message we started with. Let's say it's been, I don't know, 4 hours since you texted a friend.
If your brain is in the secure battery-saving mode, your automatic assumption is benign. Your internal narrative says, oh, they were probably just stuck in a meeting or their phone died.
No threat is detected. The vagus nerve stays calm.
Exactly. But if your brain enters the anxious battery-saving mode, the processing is catastrophic. The automatic intrusive thought becomes, I did something wrong. They're angry with me. I'm not worth their time.
And it's vital to recognize that the person isn't sitting there choosing to be insecure. It's a rapid physiological response to perceived danger.
It is literally the phone dimming the screen.
So that covers the styles that lean into connection or panic when connection feels threatened. But we also have to look at the flight responses.
Right? The styles that push connection away or just short circuit entirely.
Let's look at the avoidance style first. This is the person who values independence above all else. They get distinctly uncomfortable when things feel, quote unquote, too close.
And they tend to pull back when emotions get big.
Yeah, these are the people who, when an argument starts, literally just need to leave the house. But I have to ask, isn't that just a fancy way of saying someone doesn't care? From the outside, it just looks cold.
That is the most common misconception. It looks like apathy, but biologically, it's the exact opposite.
Wait, really? The opposite?
Yes. While the anxious person responds to stress by upregulating, clinging tighter, panicking, the avoidant person responds to stress by downregulating.
Oh, interesting. So to their nervous system, emotional intensity itself is the threat.
Precisely. Their brain engages in what we call deactivating strategies. It literally turns down the volume on their own internal emotional receptors so they don't get flooded.
So their autonomic nervous system kicks into a parasympathetic shutdown. They aren't cold, they're actually so overwhelmed that their emotional breakers just tripped.
Exactly that. Their nervous system's way of staying safe is to rely solely on themselves, because early in life, relying on others proved to be unhelpful or invasive.
Wow.
So when they walk out of the room during an argument, they aren't trying to punish you. Their brain is screaming that physical and emotional distance is the only way to regulate their soaring heart rate.
Okay, that frames it so differently. And then there's the fourth style, which is categorized as disorganized.
Yes, the push-pull dynamic.
Right. It's defined by this massive push-pull. They crave closeness, but it simultaneously terrifies them. This is often rooted in early childhood relationships that were confusingly both safe and unsafe.
It's a very difficult state to be in.
But I'm a bit stuck here. Let me play devil's advocate for a second. How is disorganized different from someone just being moody or having a toxic personality? Like, is there a risk we're just pathologizing bad behavior by calling it a nervous system adaptation?
That is a phenomenal distinction to make, and it's crucial we don't use psychological terms to excuse abuse or toxicity.
Right, because that happens a lot online.
It does. But toxic behavior is ultimately about control and a lack of empathy. Disorganized attachment, on the other hand, is an involuntary biological paradox. It is an internal state of terror, not a manipulative strategy.
The way I conceptualize it, it's like dying of thirst, but the only water source available is boiling hot.
Oh, that's a powerful image.
Right. Your biological survival drive forces you to reach for the water, but your physical self-preservation instinct forces you to violently pull your hand back the second you get close. You're trapped in this agonizing loop.
That is an incredibly accurate depiction of the internal state. From the outside, disorganized behavior looks chaotic.
Yeah, one day they're pulling you in, asking for intimacy, and the next day they're pushing you away and shutting down entirely.
But look at the childhood origin. Imagine a child whose primary caregiver, the singular entity they're biologically programmed to go to for food, safety, and comfort, is also the source of fear, volatility, or abuse.
So the very person your biology tells you to run to is the exact person your survival instinct tells you to run away from.
Yes, the biological imperative to seek proximity clashes directly with the instinct to flee. The neural pathways wire themselves to expect that connection equals danger.
So as an adult, when they start to feel deep love and closeness to a partner, which they genuinely desperately want, that old alarm bell goes off.
Their brain says, wait, we've been here before. Intimacy precedes pain, and they violently hit the brakes.
Which brings us to what I think is the single most important takeaway from this entire deep dive. Because, listening to this, it's really easy to start judging yourself.
Oh, for sure.
To think, wow, I check my phone all the time. I must be broken. Or I push people away. I'm just fundamentally flawed. But the science emphatically debunks this myth. We need to say this clearly attachment styles are not character flaws.
No, not at all. If we connect this to the bigger picture, if we look at the actual evolutionary biology behind this, we see a completely different
It's
era.
adaptations, right?
Brilliant adaptations.
Mm.
Your nervous system is incredibly smart. It made these specific adjustments to keep you connected to your caregivers as a child. Because for a human infant, connection isn't a luxury. It's literal survival. An infant cannot feed itself or protect itself.
Right. So if crying and clinging got your inconsistent, distracted caregiver to finally pay attention and feed you, your brain learned, okay, high anxiety keeps me alive.
Exactly. And conversely, if crying made your caregiver angry and withdraw, your brain learned, okay, shutting down, suppressing my needs, and avoiding emotions keeps me safe from their anger.
You were adapting to the environment you were planted in. Your brain did exactly what it was supposed to do.
Yes.
It's like wearing a heavy, thick, insulated winter coat because you grew up in the middle of a blizzard in Alaska. That coat was essential. It protected you.
Kept you alive.
But now you're 30 years old. You moved. You're sitting on a beach in the summer sun, but you're still wearing that heavy winter coat. You're sweating, you're miserable, you're isolated, and you can't figure out why it's so hard to just relax like everyone else on the beach.
The coat isn't a character flaw. It's an outdated survival tool. You aren't a broken thermometer. You're just wearing the wrong gear for your current environment.
And that leads to the million-dollar question, because the social media videos always stop there. They tell you about the coat, but they never tell you how to take it off.
Right. The doom and gloom without the solution.
Exactly. If we aren't stuck with our attachment styles, how do we change them? What are the actual mechanics?
The mechanism is neuroplasticity. The brain is not a static organ. It's constantly remodeling itself based on experience. The clinical phrase is neurons that fire together wire together.
So every time you repeat a behavior, you thicken the microscopic neural bridge, making that behavior easier next time.
Yes, and the research points directly to therapy as the most effective arena for building new bridges.
But wait, isn't therapy just, sitting on a couch and talking about your mom for 5 years? Like, how does just talking about the past actually change my nervous system's response to an unanswered text message today?
That is the old, outdated view of psychoanalysis. Modern attachment-based therapy is an active, in-the-moment environment.
Okay, so what does that look like?
It's a place to become deeply aware of your automatic patterns, to notice the exact physical sensation when your battery-saving mode kicks in, and then gradually begin to rewire it. The goal is to practice secure relating in real time.
Oh, I see. So therapy isn't just talking about the past. It's essentially a flight simulator for relationships.
That's a great way to put it.
It's a safe place to practice crashing and recovering without burning your real life to the ground.
Yes. The clinical term for that flight simulator is a corrective emotional experience. It's not just practice. It's providing the brain with undeniable proof that the old adaptations are no longer required.
Ah.
The therapist offers a secure base. When you react with your typical anxious clinging or you try to avoidantly walk out of the session, the therapist doesn't abandon you and they don't overwhelm you. They respond with stability.
And over time, your brain actually builds a new, thicker microscopic bridge that says, oh, I can express a need, and it doesn't end in disaster.
Eventually, that new pathway overrides the old abandonment pathway.
And this isn't just theoretical. The source material highlights Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC, as a prime real-world example of an organization providing this exact environment.
Right, the practice in Georgia.
Yeah, they specialize in this very work, and looking at how they're structured tells us a lot about what modern effective support actually looks like.
Because treating attachment trauma requires removing as much friction as possible.
Exactly. Let's look at their ecosystem. First of all, they're a 100% telehealth practice. Now, I used to think of telehealth as just, a convenience factor, but applied to attachment styles, it's actually a clinical advantage.
It really is.
Think about it. If you have an avoidant attachment style, the friction of driving 30 minutes to a clinic, sitting in a sterile waiting room, and feeling physically trapped in a room with a stranger, I mean, that is the absolute perfect excuse to bail on the appointment.
Your brain will look for any reason to flee. A telehealth model removes that physical flight trigger. You're in your own safe space.
It lowers the initial barrier to entry significantly, and by being entirely virtual and HIPAA compliant, they're able to serve the entire state. They cover all 159 counties in Georgia.
Meaning someone in a deeply rural area has the exact same access to high-level care as someone in downtown Atlanta.
And who is actually providing that care is vital. They have a team of over 15 licensed therapists, licensed clinical social workers, licensed professional counselors, licensed marriage and family therapists.
And they have a diverse and culturally competent team, which is so critical.
I wanted to ask about that. Why is cultural competency so critical when we're talking about unlearning attachment trauma?
Well, because attachment doesn't happen in a vacuum. Our families, our cultures, and our societal backgrounds deeply influence our baselines.
No, that makes sense.
In some cultures, fierce independence and stoicism are the absolute standard. In other cultures, deep, multi-generational enmeshment is the norm. If you're going into a flight simulator to practice relating, you need a co-pilot who actually understands the cultural airspace you grew up flying in.
That makes total sense. A therapist needs to know if your behavior is a trauma response that needs to be healed or just a cultural standard that needs to be respected. You need someone who speaks your emotional language.
Exactly. And this team has the scope of practice to handle the complexity. They provide individual therapy, couples therapy, family therapy, and teen therapy for ages 13 and up, along with life coaching.
And their specialties are essentially a checklist of everything that drained your emotional battery. Relationships, stress, anxiety, depression, trauma, PTSD, and grief.
It's a comprehensive approach.
But I want to pivot to something that rarely gets talked about in these psychological deep dives because, a flight simulator for relationships is incredibly valuable. Having a culturally competent guide is life-changing. But it is entirely useless if everyday people can't actually afford the ticket to get into the cockpit.
This raises an important question. The financial barrier is often the heaviest anchor.
Yeah.
You don't want to trigger intense financial anxiety while trying to treat relational anxiety.
Exactly. When you're already stressed, the last thing you need is a massive bill. But the logistical reality of how CHC operates is honestly the blueprint for accessibility.
Yeah, their model is very accessible.
For anyone in Georgia on Medicaid, there is a $0 copay. I mean, $0 to start rewiring your nervous system. That is incredible.
It's huge. Yeah.
And for other major insurances, it isn't an astronomical out-of-pocket cost. They work with Aetna, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and Humana. And the cost is usually just $30 to $40 a session.
That transforms mental health care from a luxury item into an accessible utility. It removes a massive layer of friction for someone trying to seek help while their nervous system is already screaming at them that the world is unsafe.
We want to make sure you have the actionable steps to actually reach out if you're in Georgia and recognizing your own baseline in this conversation.
Definitely.
You can contact them directly by phone at 404-832-0102. Their website is cheattherapy.com, and you can email them at support@cheattherapy.com.
Let me give that phone number one more time, 404-832-0102.
Having those practical resources is the bridge. It takes the theory out of the textbook and puts it into your daily life. Okay, let's unpack this. So what does this all mean? Let's bring all of this together. We've covered a massive amount of ground today.
We really have.
We moved away from the doom and gloom, pathologizing definitions of attachment styles. We learned about the amygdala hijacking the prefrontal cortex.
We learned that the way we react to an unanswered text or the sudden urge to pull away isn't a character flaw.
Right. Our relationship anxieties, our avoidance, our confusing push-pull dynamics, they're all just childhood nervous system adaptations. They were brilliant tools that kept us alive once upon a time.
And most importantly, we explored the mechanics of neuroplasticity. Because these are learned behaviors, they can be unlearned. With accessible tools and safe environments like the telehealth therapy offered by CHC, we possess the biological capacity to physically build new neural pathways for secure, healthy connections.
We started this deep dive talking about that visceral, stomach-dropping feeling and realizing that feeling is just you wearing an outdated, heavy winter coat on a sunny beach.
Which leaves us with a totally different, much larger question to consider as you go about your week.
Ooh, what is it?
If our attachment styles adapt to our environment to keep us safe, what is the modern hyperdigital world doing to our baseline right now?
Wow.
With the rise of algorithmic social interactions, remote work isolating us in our homes, and the impending integration of AI companions that never disagree with us, are we collectively adapting toward a society-wide avoidant attachment style? And if the environment itself is demanding that we emotionally distance ourselves to survive the digital noise,
Mm-hmm.
how do we consciously fight back and hold on to our fundamental human connection?